Okay.
So I had the chances to finish, the chance to be introduced to Donna through my work with the Jesuits, and we had the chance to be on a committee together. And I appreciate to have Donna with her wisdom and her experience and her different point of view that she was bringing to our meeting. So I'm really glad she accepted to share with us her own experience. So thank you, Donna.
Thank you. Miigwech. So I'll say my name in Ojibwe, okay? So it's Mayakwe, Dijnakas, Makwa Dodam, Bigtakag Anishinaabe First Nation Donjba, Ottawa Donji, Anishinaabe Koyandao. So my name is Donna Naughton, and I'm the executive director of the Cattery Native Ministry in Ottawa. I come to you from this beautiful land of the Algonquin people, in which I benefit, I work, and I'm a guest on their territory, and I just want to acknowledge that. So I'm from a little reserve called Bigtakong Anishinaabe, First Nation in Northern Ontario. It's kind of semi-remote. And because my mother was what they call enfranchised, I hope you know what that is. I'm sure you do. We had to grow, I grew up in a little town called White River, Ontario. And because we're not able to live on her reserve or my father's reserve. So I'm Ojibwe and Cree. I was raised in the Catholic faith. I remain in the Catholic faith. And I attribute my foundations of my faith to my mother and my brother. So they formed much of what I understand of our church. And my brother, who brought in culture into Cattery. So I have both. I'm an Indigenous person, I'm Catholic, and I walk a traditional path as well. So I do ceremony and stuff like that. Now, the Indigenous part of me was always there, okay? But I viewed it as negative. I viewed it as a negative, eh? And so I wasn't very much proud of who I was. So I hid a lot in different things, and I wanted to be white. I wanted to be, you know, not known as an Indigenous person, because back in those days when I was growing up, it wasn't cool to be Native. There was a lot of probably about 98% of alcoholism on the reserve, and you know, things were pretty bad. And at that time, we didn't know about residential schools at all. So I only learned that later on. So I've gone, by telling you that, I can let you know that it's been a long journey of self-discovery, of forgiveness, and you know, to embrace who I am as an Indigenous person of Canada. So I'm going to share my little screen if I can. Might take me just a minute there. Where is it? Oh, what happened? Oh, here we are. You see it?
Yes, we see it. It's fine.
Okay, and I hope I got the name right.
Yeah, Voluntas Dei Institute. It's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I thought maybe I would put the prayer up so everybody can see it. I composed this prayer when I first started working at Cattery because I was so moved and so excited about what I thought was very prevalent at the time. So it goes like this. So we would stand to the east, and I can't smudge tonight because I can't smudge in this room where I am. So we give gratitude to the Creator for the sun that rises every morning. And it reminds us that we're able to begin new each day. Father, open our eyes this morning to God's gift of a new beginning. And may we always remember our connectedness to each other and to all of creation. And for this, we say miigwech, and you can answer miigwech. Miigwech means thank you. The South, we give thanks to the Creator for the gift of relationships and love. The South represents warmth and growth. Father, help us to make decisions with our hearts, even if at times it may be difficult. May we always remember that life grows in the warmth of your light and your love. And for this, we say miigwech.
Miigwech.
To the West, we give gratitude for the gifts of the West. We honor the passing of time and the gift of rest. The West also reminds us that life is forever changing. Father, we ask for the wisdom and grace to accept life as it is. And as we change through mind, body, and spirit, that we understand our place in the world around us. And for this, we say miigwech.
Miigwech.
To the North reminds us that as winter covers the earth with the whiteness of snow, that we are able to be grateful for the warmth and the beauty of God that lies beneath. In the same way, we honor the wisdom of our ancestors and our elders. Thank you, fathers, for the gift of clarity of wisdom and discernment, and help us to always behold the earth and each other in a place of high respect. For this, we say miigwech.
Miigwech.
Miigwech, Mother Earth, for providing for our needs, the food, the water, the air, and everything that helps us to be healthy and whole. And miigwech, Father God, for giving us the gift of your Son, Jesus. We pray that we may be able to live life to the fullest and be filled with his love and compassion towards others and all of humanity. For this we say, miigwech. Okay. So, when I was given these questions, I thought about it and I thought, what could benefit the group tonight? What could possibly make an imprint on something about my life? Okay. So I want to give you a sense of what reconciliation is. So first of all, I want to make clear that reconciliation is a journey, okay? And it means different things to different people at different parts of time. There's many ways of reconciliation, but for me, I want to talk about my own journey as an Indigenous Catholic person, okay? So, like I said, where I grew up, when I grew up, I lived in a little town called White River, and it was very mostly just Native kids came in from the reserve to go to school, and you know, the non-Native kids, we didn't really gel together too much, you know, and there was a lot of bullying and, you know, racism and that kind of thing, because people only based their opinions on what they saw. And at that time, you know, nobody really understood that the problems that our family was facing had to do with the residential school. And so I never knew any of this until I actually went to university. And that's when, that's when I ran into this idea of being Indigenous. And we used to call them Aboriginal, you remember? But we call ourselves Indigenous. As a matter of fact, the proper term is First Nations. I am a First Nations person. So growing up, being First Nation was the last thing I wanted to be. I can't tell you the amount of time and energy that I spent trying to not be Indigenous, because it wasn't great. You see today a lot of Indigenous people on the street and, that kind of thing. And I found that very shameful to look at. So I strove very, very much to not want to be viewed that way. So I tried to do well in school, and I tried to, please a lot of people and all that kind of stuff. And what I was doing was I was just falling into the pit, of just trying to make people like me, and forget that I was Indigenous, but they never did. So it was a difficult part, and I'll tell you as we go. So reconciliation to me, okay, is I think it's one of the most difficult things that I've ever done in my life. And we're in a time now where it continues to be challenging, okay, especially in the church. It's like we need a place. We need our own place in the church. We need to have a voice. And we need allies. So we need you. But in order for that to happen, we must come together and learn about Canada's true history, right? Not just by reading it, but by being together and listening to the stories and listening to the impacts of what colonization has had on our communities and, in my life especially. And so, when I think of reconciliation, I'm thinking that our allies and, every Canadian actually should have a working knowledge of our history, right? Where did those policies come from? Like I have one listed here, the Bagot Commission in 1842. In those years, they proposed the separation of children from their parents as the most expedient way to achieve assimilation. How difficult that was for me to hear that the church that I loved, the church that I grew up in, really had an ulterior motive. And they wanted us to be assimilated, I guess, into one faith and one. So we were denied all of our cultural background. So when I grew up, I didn't, and my mother went to residential school. And to her, there was no way there was ever going to be anything like drums or anything that had to do with Indigenous spirituality in our house. And she did not want to talk about it. So I accepted that. And most of it was focused on, in residential schools, some got a good education, probably. Some say that they have, and that may be true. But the majority of it was mostly about agriculture, how to cook and clean and sew and all that kind of stuff, which are good things. But I wouldn't say that it was an education per se. And in the meantime, the education that we did get was, not knowing our language, and how wrong it felt to be to want to communicate with your own sister who was across the hall, that you couldn't even speak with. And that was the experience with my mother.
Listen, I'm not really. Okay, hold on, Renata, let me take this out of.
Huh? Hello?
Somebody just arrived. They turned off the microphone, so it's fine, Donna. You can.
Oh, okay. And then, the treaties, it's important to know how the treaties, how we began as friends, and how we ended up being totally, oppressed. Those things are important to know, to understand the timeline of things that happened, because the Indian Act is still in place today. And it was back then used to control how Native people lived, So things like we had to have there was a pass system. So if you were living on the reserve, there was an Indian agent who helped you who decided for you whether you could leave or not, So we didn't have much freedom. We didn't have the ability to be lawyers. We didn't have the ability to be, to own land. We didn't have the ability to do anything because we were we were considered like, if you didn't believe in Christianity, then, you were like a non-person kind of thing, So there was a big push to be able to assimilate and, our people, and the effects of those kinds of decisions and policies have affected us from generation to generation, and it's called intergenerational trauma. So that's what I experienced in my life, was the intergenerational trauma, the trauma that came from my mother's mother, my mother's father. My sister used to talk about the inability of my mother to hold her like you would your own baby, the inability for my mom to tell my brother he was loved. All of those things, parenting things. So the parenting part was really, really affected in my family anyways. So question number 2 is, back to this one though, I feel I need allies to be able to, there's so much information out there to know it, to understand it, to be with us, to get to know us, and then to help others understand, right? That's what kind of reconciliation is. It's not up to us, but it's up to people, the rest of Canada, to understand, because we already know what we went through, So the second one, is it possible to name some of the elements of our Canadian and Quebec history that have serious consequences on the dignity of Indigenous people against which you have fought and continue to resist? So I think the biggest historical event that happened was the trauma of residential schools. I think we all know that. I believe that Quebec was a little bit later instituting the schools. And at first there was 6 of them, and I don't know how many was added, but they were mostly run by Catholic institutions at that time, and then one was Anglican or something. So, and the same things that were happening there were happening right across the country. And for me today, what happens is the intergenerational effects of residential schools are what some people don't really understand. They think, well, that happened a long time ago, and I'm not, I wasn't a part of it, and so therefore I don't have a responsibility. Every Canadian has a responsibility, everybody, including us, right? So those, the movement that's happening today is a lot of people are embracing their culture and their heritage, and they are healing. Okay, it's a part of a person's healing. When you remove a person's identity and say, well, you're no longer that, you're now this, and then the person can't connect to that, can't engage with that, there's something missing, right? And so the dignity that we have is starting to evolve. And I'm starting to see that more and more Indigenous Catholic people are bringing those cultural elements into our church, which is so important and so needed. if you want people to feel, Indigenous people to feel comfortable in church because it's a real trigger, okay, like a lot of people don't like going to church anymore. It's it's nice to have like something that they can connect to, you know. So I work with Father Daryl. You can see a picture there of him on the side there. And we do a mass every year, a mass of creation. And so, you know, we celebrate our culture within the mass as much as we possibly can. And then the next one is racism, including institutional racism, educational, in the you know, in the systems, like the police system, the judicial system. Those are all, you know, people don't like to know that, but there is racism there, right? About Indigenous people, about Black people, about, you know what I mean? Like it's almost unconscious, okay? So the biggest thing that we are trying to, I wouldn't say fight against, but we're continue to resist perhaps, is colonization. And we want to reclaim our Indigenous place within the Catholic Church. And so I'm finding, I'm meeting more Indigenous elders and leaders, and you know, and it's being welcomed, okay? I'm not saying that it's everywhere, you know, because it's kind of a journey to want to, you know, having an eagle feather in mass and using tobacco and smudging and all the smoke and everything, you know, that's quite, takes an understanding from people to have that and know what it is. So, so those are just a couple of elements that I deal with on a pretty reasonable basis, like a reasonable often. And what do you think about the justice in the face of these injustices? You know, there's so many injustices, eh? Water, clean water, you know, we wanting to have clean water. We have the right to know who we are. We have the right to know where we come from. We have the right to know our purpose and where am I going? And a lot of that is found in our connection to creation and because we are a part of creation. And that's another concept that may be difficult for people to understand. But we're earthy people. We come from the earth, and we have this understanding that everything is in relationship. Okay, we are in relationship with all of our, you know, my mother used to be a trapper, so she would go out and catch animals for us to eat, to be able to skin the hides, so to be able to bring it to the Hudson Bay Company, and that, you know what I mean, to make money for the family, that kind of thing. That's kind of what I remember when I was younger, but I didn't want to have anything to do with that. And how Cattery has managed to do that is I created a program called Kendaswin, which means in English, how we learn. And what it is a land-based healing program. So everything that that happens would happen on the land. And we're fortunate because the Archdiocese has gifted us a 49-year lease to a piece of property along the Ottawa River here in Ottawa. And that's where we would do our ceremonies. Like we have a sweat lodge there. We have, okay, here's the next one. We have you know, here's a picture in the middle there. These are, this is what we do. In terms of embracing our culture, you know, we begin to connect to the drums. We begin to connect to the sound of the drum. I remember my first powwow. I walked in and I could not believe what I was feeling when I was hearing that drum. It awakened something within me. And I had to go through a lot of tears and grief to grieve that which we were denied, that which I was denied, you know, things like my rites of passage as an Indian girl, as a Native girl, as an Indigenous girl, you know, we were not, those were all hidden and forbidden, and, you know, so we don't know those. Today, you know, we're bringing them back, you know, like I'm doing a ceremony for my granddaughter, so as her becoming a woman, you know. So I think I just keep on coming back to the same things. It's good to know the history. It's painful, okay? Nobody wants to look at that. It's painful to hear what, you know, the ancestors did, and how much disruption it caused in a people. Yeah? And it's, you know, even our Pope said it was genocide, eh? You know, and that we are the ones that are taking it back, right? And feeling good. Remember, I told you I didn't want to be Native. Now I stand here proud today, being a Native woman, being a Native person. And, you know, I do some ceremonies in the church. I do ceremonies for women. I do, you know, I help my grandchildren along. And that was a learning experience. It wasn't just, you know, when you've been told it's wrong, wrong, wrong all your life, and then all of a sudden, hey, just a minute, this doesn't feel wrong. This doesn't feel like I'm doing something bad, you know? And so I had to really immerse myself in that in order to be free, to be who I am, you know? So the next one, so what have been the efforts of Indigenous people to discover the richness of their culture? And I want to use the story of the potter and the clay, you know. So we as Indigenous people, we were formed by the Creator as beautiful vessels at the very beginning, right? Beautiful, beautiful vessels. We were, you know, there was times where it was rough in between nations, but you know, we managed to level things out, and we had treaties within one another. We had, you know, we traded with one another. You know, we married into different societies. All of those things. Like, we were just beautiful vessels, and then things happen to break us apart. You know, and those are all those experiences of residential schools, of abuses, physical, sexual, emotional, spiritual, all of those abuses that happen time and time and time again, and generations and generations. And, you know, the potter, you know, loves us so much, loved me so much, that he took each piece of me that was broken, and he shined it, and he took care of it, right? And he helped me up. He helped me to love myself, to have the ability. I'm so thankful for my brother and my mother, because they helped me in my search for the Creator. You know, my mom, she never knew, because she died in 1992. She never knew my journey about Indigenous culture. And, but God knew. And, you know, there's a way in Japan that the broken pieces become inlaid. They inlaid them with gold. And I feel that's what's happening with us today. That's what happened to me. That, you know, the potter had such love and wanted us to, like, we're in Lent, you know, so this was my contemplation for today, actually. And that we're beautiful again. We may not look like this one. We may not look like, you know, the perfect kind of vessel, right? But we are beautiful nonetheless. And we're even stronger than we were. I'm stronger than I was, you know? And it's because of the richness and beauty of the culture that I embraced for myself and my family. Yeah. And so, and the last one is to be able to build a sweat lodge together as a place that's a healing modality, they call that, eh? That's one of the ways in which we use that to do healing, right? To go into the lodge, to go back into your womb of your mother, to come out and be brand new again, eh? What does that remind you of? It reminds you of reconciliation, right? That's how we are. And these stories of our elders, you know, I would not be here if it wasn't for the story of the elders and what they have gone through. And they still, this lady here, she's 93 years old. And this was taken in church. And she comes in and she sings in Cree for us. And she's very spiritual elder. And this last picture is the picture of my brother, John Corsten, who completely changed the face of Cattery by bringing culture into the ministry. He made it a safe place for me to come. And if it was not for him and his healing that he went through, I'm not sure if I could sit here in front of you to tell you what a beautiful life it is to be Catholic and to be Indigenous. Tough life, tough ministry, tough to work. But you know what? It's times like this where we get to speak about what God is doing. Right now, Cattery Native Ministry is in the process of visioning for a healing and training center. And that will be a place for Indigenous people to come, explore our culture, learn on the land, and we open it for everyone. You know, we are to share. An elder not long ago told me, he said, you know, it's our responsibility to share what we know. And so there's so much more to the story, but it's kind of like I started off being very confused and very unsure of who I am. And I had to go down and to make that discovery of what it means to be Indigenous for me, okay? Many other people do everything differently. But I had, with the support of my brother and my mother, after their healing, I was able to be, well, like you see me now. You know, I'm grateful to be Catholic. I'm grateful because I see the value in the Eucharist, and I'm also see the value of our cultural heritage in there as well. You know, so I want to thank you very much for listening, and I hope that I answered a lot of the questions just
Thank you.
saying that story. Okay, I can stop sharing now.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. Thanks for sharing the journey you went through, and also through your own journey, how others also have to face and to resist and to discover the richness of their culture and their life. I think you really did a great job to simplify and really give us the foundation for discussion. I would really appreciate if those who are around this Zoom meeting, you probably had questions before, you probably have new questions after listening to Donna. So it will be your time to ask questions to Donna. I still have many I can ask her, but I think it would be great that you ask your own questions, you share your own comments and reflections. So
Mhm.
it's time for you. You can open your mic to talk, just saying, I want to speak, or you can also raise the hand. And so I can give you the possibility to talk. So Gilbert is a good one to, we say in French, break the ice, briser la glace to start. So Gilbert, I give you the first questions to ask or the first comment.
Well, first of all, I want to say, Donna, I felt I was being nourished.
Mhm.
That I came to this meeting thinking, well, I've worked with the Native people. I've done some of the ceremonies with Father Curtis. And as you talked about the drums and all that, and I feel when I'm at a funeral, when they drum, oh, it is so powerful,
Mhm.
so powerful. I just want to thank you because you've helped me. And I'm going to talk with Father Curtis. Have you ever met Father Curtis Sapir?
No, I don't think so.
We have over 3,000 people at our First Nation here. And if we could connect, because out of our First Nation, we had the first Lieutenant Governor of New Brunswick.
Oh, I know him.
Okay, and
Braden Nicholas, yes.
and
Yes.
also we have some senators from the First Nation here. So
Wow.
it's a very well-educated
Mhm.
First Nation. But as like all places, there's problems, of course.
Mhm.
But they're doing the best they can with the Healing Lodge and that. And I had the privilege of doing the opening blessing for their Healing Lodge.
Mm.
But I just want to say, you gave me new insight into my ministry. And Father Cecil has been going over to the First Nation himself. I'm here with Father Ngozi, who could relate to what you were saying as his experience in Nigeria.
Mhm.
And I just have one little thing.
Yes.
When you talked about when you were a child and you were ashamed,
Yes.
well, I could relate to that
Mm.
because I was an Italian.
Mhm.
My mother was Irish, and in the 1950s in Toronto, where I was raised, the Italians were coming over, and they all wore black, and people made fun of them.
Mm.
I remember being in the schoolyard at a Catholic school, emphasizing that, oh, my mother's side, she was Irish, not knowing in 1930 you'd be ashamed to be Irish in Toronto too. The prejudice is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, for sure.
It is a terrible feeling for a child. And it doesn't matter what background to feel that shame.
Mhm. Exactly.
And that takes a lot of healing. But
Yeah.
thank you so much.
You're
And on the
welcome.
telephone here, I have David DeLuca, who's been listening to the whole thing.
Oh,
Okay, so just
yeah.
thank you so
Hello.
much. Okay. Is
Thank
anyone-
you, Gilbert. So
Yeah,
you are
that's-
3 in your little square of the computer. You are 3
well,
altogether. That's
We
great.
used to the
Donna,
Catering Ministry.
I want you to come down here.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the Catering Native Ministry used to do prayer days. They call them prayer days on the Burnt Church First Nation.
Oh,
So
yes, I know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we used to do that, and we bring the as much culture as we could, much understanding, building.
Well, I have money set aside for a mission, and I would love you to come.
Oh, that would be lovely.
But we'll talk about this later on. Okay.
Yes, because we're going to Halifax.
How are you? Okay. Well, if you're
yeah.
driving through, we can put you up. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Well,
you.
already a fruit of our meeting and the encounter with Donna. Other
Okay.
questions,
Keep quiet
comments,
now.
reflections? Yes, Lorraine.
Yeah, we are also, we're Métis background, and when we were growing up, at least when I was, my mother and my dad, they were told that they were not related to the Métis at all. They were, nope, nope, we're not. And it turns out they were, but it was like that, the shame that, no, we didn't identify with that. So, but it wasn't me personally, because it didn't, like, it was a few generations before that. They didn't go to residential school, so it wasn't like that. But one of the things that hit me when you were saying things about bringing the drums and the culture in the church, I think that um, when before Vatican II, when everything was Latin and the church had its own culture, and after that it changed so that the people's culture got into the church. I think it's important that it's not just the First Nations culture that needs to come into the church, it's everyone's culture. Like the people from Nigeria, why can't they have their culture in the church?
That's
And
right.
the current young people, their culture, it's not, it's like the kind of music that I like. Before, when I was growing up, oh, that didn't belong to church, but now it's becoming more accepted. So
Mhm.
it's yeah, it's important to know it's not just the peoples who were repressed at the time for the First Nations. It's everybody's culture that was in the church specifically not allowed. So yeah, so I just want to notice that it's a bigger thing in the church too.
Well,
Yeah,
it is
and
now,
it's a
especially,
richness that we lose when we don't open
Yeah,
to all that.
well, Pope
With
Francis,
Donna.
yes, Pope Francis is asking us to be a synodal church,
yeah.
right? To listen to one another. And there's many, many, many things that we need to listen to. My story is just one of many. So thank you for that. Miigwech.
Somebody else?
Like Loren says, that we're both come from Métis background, and my Métis heritage is through my father, and my mother doesn't have any Aboriginal or Indigenous heritage. So I took after my mother, so I don't really look Métis or Aboriginal, but I had a lot of friends in school that did, and you can tell that their self-esteem was really low.
Mhm.
And I had a friend who was quite smart, and in grade 9 or grade 10, something happened. And I talked to him. I said, like, what's happening? Because your marks are falling like crazy. And he says, there's so much pressure to be the first one to do well in school,
Mm.
and that we're not supposed to do well. That Aboriginals don't have a place up there. And it's just that their self-esteem is really low, and it has to be built up, because we're all equal. It's just they need to heal.
Yeah, that's right. Even myself, we have so much to learn. I used to think, and this is a confession, so the recording's on. I used to think that Métis people didn't suffer as much as we did. And I was told by my own daughter that she said, Mom, that's not true. You need to do more research. So I said, okay, I would. Oh my gosh, the Métis people suffered. They don't even have a land base. You know what I mean? How awful is that? So yes, and lots of them went to residential schools and day schools, and the effects are the same, and so I really changed my way of thinking. And I thought, well, if I change my way of thinking about that, it's possible to change our way of thinking, right? It is. We just need to be open to that, to open to things that we sometimes don't understand at first. So I thought, yeah, that was a good lesson for me. So yeah, thank you.
And you invited us to discover or to relearn our Canadian history and to hear things that we didn't have the chance to hear at school or in the books we are reading about this history. So we have to move a little bit to
Yeah,
have the chance to grab
Yeah.
different view
I don't-
on this
I
history.
don't know in your territories where you are, if you've, if anyone in their parish has done the blanket exercise.
Oh, I did that at the Baptist church.
Yes,
That was
and
the
so,
history. Oh,
Yeah. and that's what we do. And then also there's another booklet put out by the Jesuit Forum, and it's called Indigenous Voices. Listen to Indigenous Voices, something like that. And that's another great way of learning, you know, meeting together every week, having discussions, talking, you know, that kind of thing. And then having an Indigenous elder sit with you and help you to, you know, understand. That's another way too, you know. But it's important. The history is so important. I can't tell you enough. Okay, thank you. I
Thank
hope
you.
I'm answering your questions. Like,
I got one
that's
I think
more.
there's somebody down here that had his hand up. He was gonna-
Sorry.
And I think Andrew.
Father Joe, I think.
Yeah, Andrew, then Gilbert again. Andrew first. Your microphone, Andrew.
Thank you, Donna, for your wonderful presentation. Much appreciated. And I worked 1 year with Gilbert, and I used to bring communion every week to Indigenous people on the reserve at the Tobit First Nation Reserve while I was in New Brunswick, and I developed a great appreciation for them. The question I have is, how do we as non-Indigenous people help Indigenous people take it back?
Well, okay. So I'm going to say something that may not sound very positive, okay? But it's something that I've learned to say. First of all, it's not up to Indigenous people to tell you. Okay. We had to go in within ourselves to discover that kind of question about how do we help ourselves? How do we do that ourselves? So that's a journey. It is there's so many different ways. Like if you have a Catholic Indigenous healing lodge like Cattery's going to have, then support that. Support it. Be with them. Visit. Listen to the elders. Listen to the teachings that people have, and then you know, there has to be some kind of trust that needs to be built. It's been broken, right? It's been broken. That trust has been pretty shaken up, but it's not to say that we can't rebuild it, right? And it's doing what we're doing here tonight, continue on, that help you with the ideas of how to help, right? What to do, how to give back, you know, those kinds of things. Good allies stand for us, stand with us, stand for us. And, you know, when there's things that happen, you know, they have a voice, you know. And Father Daryl, he's always saying, to be Indigenous is one thing. To be an Indigenous Catholic, that is something very unique. And, you know, we need to honor that, right? That's the beginning of a relationship that we need to have. So start at home. That's where you start. Start at home. Start here. Here. And then those answers will come. Sorry, I can't give a straighter answer than that. It's kind of convoluted, but you know what I mean? You know, that's how we've built relationships in Ottawa, is to help them. We've invited people to come and listen to our elders, to partake and participate in ceremonies and that kind of thing. And, you know, slowly over time, it starts to become a better relationship. You know, it gets
Isn't
better.
that what Jesus always said? Come and see.
Yeah, come and see. Amen.
Thank you, Andrew and Donna. Gilbert?
Well, I was just going to say, when you were talking about your mother, when she was when the liturgies come, she didn't want the drums and all that, you know, and when I first went to the First Nation at Mass, I would hold the feather, you know, the eagle feather. We have eagles here on the St. John River. And I wanted to do more, you know, stuff, you know, with the young people. I wanted them to wear things, and they had them there. But there were a group of elders at the time, and I hate to say have passed on by now, who said, oh, no, we can't have that. This has to be this way. And they were more Rome than I was.
Yes.
You know, but you know, I mean, you know, it's just the way it was. They, you know, the Latin masses they would sing and that. But now the culture has come in, you know, more. The language, the Melissa language.
Very important, yes.
And we have a Imelda Pearly. Have you ever heard of Imelda Pearly?
No.
You translate it into Melicy, a dictionary, you know, for people. But I'm just saying how that things are changing, and you're right. When people there at the First Nation, they know if you're with them, and that's all they need to know.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And you know, it's like building relationships, and you know, it's a different kind of relationship today. It's not, you know what I mean? Like we're not, you know, bowing down and, you know, all that kind of thing, and putting people, you know, priests and stuff like that up on, you know, pedestals. That's all I remember my mom did. You know, it's like it was like they were God, you know. And today we want to be in relationship, but we don't want to be in that kind of relationship. We want to be seen as like a fairness and equality, you know, like we don't need to be fixed by anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
But I remember having a group of sisters come from Hamilton area. They were beautiful young sisters in full habit. And I was so nervous with them going to the First Nation with my own think, oh, what if they, you know, it was just when all this was happening, you know,
Yeah.
you know, and yet the young people and the people, they did a mission there with the youth. They loved the sisters. You know, it was wonderful. And I said to myself, oh, what am I worrying about? You know, I had my own little hang-ups in there. But now you just got to let them go. They had a great time.
There you go. There's a couple of sisters somewhere in the East Coast. There's so much First Communions and so much stuff going on in the church. I was like amazed. I was thinking, you guys need to come here to Ontario to do that kind of work, because there's very little happening here, you know, in my world. But it's starting a little bit.
Well, that order I was talking about is in Hamilton, just around Kitchener. They have it was founded by a priest from Hamilton. Wonderful group.
Great.
And Donna, I think we also have to learn from you and with you on issues that are important, actually, even if it's not perfect among First Nations either, but all
Yeah.
this, the question of ecology is
Yes.
something we have, I think, to learn together, to learn how to find new ways to relate to the territory.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
also the question of women, I would also like you to say a few words about the long journey of Indigenous women, because I think we also have to learn something from the culture about the relations of women with the community and the leadership that many of you assume.
Well, there's so much teaching about that, but I think what I can share is the Indian Act made a lot of problems for Indigenous women. And we were not, for instance, we were not able to vote until 1962, 3, something like that, you know, an Indigenous woman. And you had to give up your status in order to go to different places, you know. You were not allowed to, you know, like, for example, pool halls, I guess, apparently we're not allowed in there. And so Indigenous women, especially, were not frowned upon, but thought of lower than anything. I mean, you can see that happening still today with the missing and murdered women. Okay, that's a huge issue. There's also, you know, more and more Indigenous leaders coming forward today, which is very good. But at one time, you never saw that, you know. In terms of our church, I don't know if we'll ever we'll see that in our day. But I feel that leadership, most of the leadership comes from women. And in our culture, we are the life givers. We are, the women are the givers of life. And we know what it's like to be able to do that. We have a responsibility to the water for that reason, that we're so connected with the moon, we're so connected with water, just physiologically, just within a natural way of being in the world, you know. And that's why, you know, the sweat lodges are called going back into your mother's womb, and, you know, and then you're reborn. So it's, a lot of it has to do with rebirth, with respect. It has to do with, you know, understanding, you know, bringing those teachings back so that our young girls understand the responsibility that we have as a young person. So, you know, colonization threw that all underneath the bus for us. We were not allowed to even know anything like that. And so it's all coming back now. So the women of the communities, like especially Haudenosaunee people, they have a female clan system. Like they are the leaders, the clan mothers, they call them. They're a traditional form of government, actually. And so our drums has a lot to do with being given, because you know, the big powwow drum. We understand the power of female, but you know, males need a little bit more teaching. You know, I'm not going to get too much into the traditional teachings of it. If you want to learn one day, then, maybe we can do something specifically for that. But that's the best I can tell you for tonight.
Thank you. Miigwech, Donna.
Mhm.
Is there any last questions, comments? I think we have a lot to continue to deepen from what you said. I hope there will be chances to get in touch with Kateri Native Ministry or other, wherever everyone is, with Indigenous communities close to them. There is more and more possibilities, I think, for allies to participate in powwow and House of Friendship and different event. There is, at least in French, but probably the same in English, so much literature, so much books that are written actually. So we have many chances to get closer to our neighbors that are Indigenous people, First Nations people. And I will send it to all of you, but Doug just told me before we started about a series about first encounters that is possible that we can see on internet. So I'll try to find a reference and send it to you. But there is so many good things going on, actually. Movies also done by First Nations people that help us to understand the past and the actual reality.
There's Senator Sinclair. You can go on YouTube, Senator Sinclair, and his latest video. It's about 20 minutes long. It's very, very powerful. It would be something that you could see as a group, and then it's it's quite moving. I forget the name of it, but I used it in our last session. It was very, very impactful. I just want to say a couple of things about our Pope. He made a big pilgrimage across Canada, and he was in Quebec. I was in Quebec, and because our people, could have been a language barrier, could have been a lot of things, but some, just by seeing him, they were happy, wanting to happy. Others were wanting more, didn't feel that they got exactly what they wanted. But I think that because of that, and I'm very grateful for the graves of the 215 children that were found out west. This has started. This is what this whole thing started. It started then. And, first thing you know, the Pope was coming, and, there's now, I don't know how many grave sites they've found now, quite a few, excuse me. But I just want to say that I think his message of he really spoke to Indigenous people, but he also spoke to clergy. He also spoke to bishops. And I feel that there's starting to be a bit of a change. I'm starting to be a bit of a change, which is a good thing. And we need to have more dialogue, okay, on what some of the challenges are right now, and to seek deep within ourselves, us included. What does walking together mean? What does it really mean? How do we walk together? Are we just going to be, here's an example, liturgy, okay? Liturgy is one of the most fascinating areas that I have found, because I'm a musician, So we have the Cattery Native Ministry Mass once a month. And so we do everything. We do the liturgy. Father Darrell helps us, and and we do the music and all the parts of the Mass, and it's quite beautiful. My brother started that. I can't take any credit for that. And but when we go into another church or another parish, we have to really kind of walk carefully, right? Because we don't want to offend and have people think that we're coming in to take over. That's not that. And then we don't want to feel like we're just put in there either, So there really has to have a conversation to be able to help with that process. So that's just one area of, you want to talk about challenges, then yeah, that's an area. And then you go to some parishes, they're so open, they'll just say, it's great, we'll follow you, do whatever you want, And then I've been in other parishes where it's like they won't even say hello because they're quite offended that we're there. So, there's still some work to be done. That's all I say. It's an opportunity. That's how I look at it,
Thank you, Donna.
Yeah, you talked about the pitfalls. Well, here we go. Our wonderful Indian Act, the doctrine of discovery. Please know that. Learn it. What does it mean, the doctrine of discovery? Terra nullius, there's another one. Terra nullius, where they came in and they just planted their, this is British land, or this is land of France, and this, you know what I mean? So, and the other government policies that are still in place, the treaties, have someone come in and who's an expert on treaties and talk about treaties. There's a young woman who died, a mother who died in Quebec, I think. And, Joyce was her name. And she was treated, in the healthcare system, and what happened because of it? Do they understand? Did they take training? Were they able to, we never knew. We never found out, education system, all of those things. Those are things that you can help us with, yeah. And just our hopes for the future, because I don't think I would do this work if I didn't have hope. Yeah, me
Yeah, hope is the foundation of everything. I see Jim hand with the hand up. No, okay. So Donna, I think we learned a lot with you today.
Yes.
Have to learn a few words, but I'll start with miigwech. But I should learn a lot more to be able to communicate with you in your own language. That's one of my goal of my sabbatical coming this year. And Donna, you opened a few paths for us to be able to take that issue and to understand it better, and to maybe go further in every place where we are. As an institute, we will certainly talk about that again. I know some for the Francophones want to do some visit to a power or to a parish altogether. Some are closer. The Anglophones are more dispersed everywhere. But I think if a few of you in your team, you want to do something in a community, Indigenous community close to your place, I think that could be a good follow-up. So I thank you, Donna, again. And I think you have a long day. You still have so many things tomorrow also to say. So I think it's not like being in the same room, but we could open our mic or do some appreciation to you. But I think it was great, really great to have you tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
So very,
I hope what I said, it was helpful. You know, and if you decide to have another presentation, there's another one that we do. It's called Towards Wardship, and that's a historical journey for everyone. So I do it with Jerry Kelly. So we have both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. So yeah, you know, just let us know. Let us, you know, and if we can help, we will help. We'll do our best to help.
thank you, Donna.
Okay,
So-
well,
So
Yeah.
have a good evening. I'll keep the members just for a few minutes,
yes,
and I just let you,
I can go now.
you can go.
Thank
So I
you.
can just share the few news with the group after. Thank you, Donna. I think I
Thank you.
see you in Montreal in 2 days, isn't it?
Yes, I'll be
And
there.
we'll be together
Yes,
in
we'll be
Rio.
together.
That would be
Yes.
great.
Okay.
Goodbye, Donna.
Salut.
Go up, man.
Au
Go up,
revoir.
man.